Hey folks, welcome to episode 5 of the Knifeprint Masterclass Series. I'm your host Dennis Tyrell of Tyrell Knifeworks, and today we're going to get into measuring and printing and really using your designs. Sizing them and really getting them to the point where you can actually do something with them and not just see them on the screen. Let's get right into it. Now let's talk about sizing, exporting, and printing your knife and using your design. So I'm going to jump into one of my designs here, and the first thing I want to talk about is something I mentioned in the first episode, which was sizing your knife. So here I can see the length of this knife is 11, almost 12 inches, and its height is almost 2 inches. So you can change these parameters, and this is kind of like an overall scaling of your knife. This is what you want to make sure you get right first before you go setting sizes on things. Because although this is 3/16, this is 5/32, the size of this hole, if I go and change the width, it's going to scale everything. So you want to make sure you do this before you set any sizes. So I'm happy with this knife. I know this pattern is correct. So make sure you do that first. Other things about sizing, use the guidelines that they provide for you. So in other words, if I grab this, for example, if I move it around, it's giving you all these nice sizes. It's telling me I'm 0.437 from the top. I'm, 0.4 from the next one going this way. And, it tells me where I am from the bottom. And sometimes I just will flip between them, and I know it's pretty much centered. This stuff isn't exact, but for a design like this, it's completely fine. Also, moving these around, and then I do this just to center these up quickly between the other ones. You can also use the drill snap, but sometimes it's just easier to drag things around instead of flipping all these and go into settings and flipping all those. Same with other paths. If you start moving nodes and things, those will always pop and tell you, okay, how far are you from the top? So when you want to size something, that's a great way to do it. Obviously, you have the measure tool, which is great if you want to just take a measurement. You'll notice and pay attention to what numbers point at what. So the one on the top here, the 5.87, you see it's pointed at the center portion right there. So do pay attention to what it's actually measuring. And it's great that as you drag it around, it's giving you the different sizes along the paths. So that's really cool. If I go this way, of course, it'll give me all those sizes. Because sizing is important. You want your design to be accurate and proportional to the units that you're using. I'm in inches, so I want to make sure that, this is, the handle, for example, is just over an inch wide here, which is about right for the narrow part of the handle that I want to hold in my hand. Other things we mentioned, the skeletonize, of course, that also gives you a way to it tells you how far in you're going to skeletonize, so that's a good feature as well. If I wanted it a 1/4 inch, then I know I have a 1/4 inch frame around that skeletonized area. So let's talk about export. So we went through a few of the things here in export. First thing is the file name. It always comes up with the default Knifeprint export. You have to delete that and use, whatever test. Do know that it puts some random characters over this, so if you keep saving the same name, it's actually saving new files. So pay attention to that, that you will have extra files even if you name it the same, so it's not always overwriting them. So let's talk about formats. The default format is PDF. That really is the one I recommend you use. Why PDF? Because it retains sizes. The PDF will be exactly the size that you have in your design, and that's what you need. A PNG, well, it will look good and it will fit on a page. It's scaled to fit on a page or whatever size you printed. So it's very hard to get this into the size of something that to match what you actually want in the design. It's just not an easy thing to do. I always suggest you use PDFs. If you just wanted a picture of your design but you didn't care if it was true to size, PDF is fine. The DXF option is if you want to export this to another application, like you want to 3D print your knife just to see what it looks like. I know people that do that. You want to send it to some other water jetting services. Maybe you have your own favorite water jet service and you usually use, you can do that. And there's other things that will take DXF files as well. Maybe you want to, you use Fusion 360 or whatever other application that you're using. An option for some of these, we'll go over some of the other options here. For PDF, the margin options, I always suggest, so I'm on a Mac, and on a Mac, if I just use the default margins, I find that when I go to print this, it still clips the edges a little bit. So I usually apply my own margins and I put a nice big margin of 1 inch. For me personally, most of my knives are rather large, so they don't fit on a page anyway. So I'm going to have to cut them and paste 2 pages together, so it doesn't really matter to me that it's going to overflow. So I would recommend you use a pretty large margin just so you don't get any clipping. As far as no margin, I do not recommend this because it will, when you go to print it on a printer, which eventually you're going to want to do, it's going to clip off some of the image and you're going to lose some of it, especially if it's on multiple pages. This is okay if you have really small knives that fit on a page anyway, but if they don't, you're going to clip out some of them. PDF scaling, I never use this feature primarily because if I'm printing to PDF, I want it to be exactly the size. I never want it scaled. So I don't really get this feature and what the usability of this feature is. I usually always set it to original. The adding pluses to holes, this will put a little plus over it, so if you have a center punch and you want to just lay your pattern over the steel and then glue it there or put it there with magnets, then you can just hit the pluses with a center punch to know where you're going to drill your holes. So that's really helpful. Print in 1 page, again, this scales it so that it fits in 1 page. I never do this for the same reason I never scale the PDF. And then print each layer. We covered this in the last episode. If you have multiple layers, you can have them printed each on their own page. If we go to PDF, the only thing is adding the pluses to holes. Again, you couldn't really use this to cut out and put on steel, so it's just for aesthetics at that point. And DXF, there are no options here. Okay, so let's just call this. This is my black tip design, and I will just export it with margins, original, like that. Now it shows me down here that it's exported it, and you can see it's added this random characters at the end. If I just open up Finder here and go to Downloads, I see that there is the file. Now, again, I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to double click this and it's going to open up in the preview. So this is the Mac preview. If you're on Windows, it'd be whatever PDF viewer that you're using. And you can see that it's added, it's given you a scale here, which is kind of nice. And this design is too big to fit on a page. A lot because I have 1 inch margins here. It wouldn't have fit anyway, but and I can see it's got pluses on all these holes, which I will never be center punching these, but because I usually just randomly drill these, but it does for this one. So that's pretty interesting. And what I do when I print these is I will simply just take one of the pages, I'll take a pair of scissors, and I will cut down this. I'll lay it over top of this one, and I'll just put a piece of tape here, and that works perfectly. And I'll tape the front and the back, and then I'll just use my design. So if you're on a Mac, and from here you do File, Print, one issue here, and Mac always seems to do this, the default is scale to fit. Okay? Do not use this. Use scale, and for some reason the scale always goes to 86%. You need to set this at 100 and then print it. That will ensure that your sizes are correct. If you use the default at 86 and then print it, your design will be shrunken. It'll be 86% of your actual design. So keep that in mind. This is just a quirk on Mac. It has nothing to do with knife print. So keep that in mind. If you're on Windows, just check this and make sure that the PDF is not scaled in any way when you're printing it. That will just give you some grief later. Okay, let's talk about one of my favorite features, the Waterjet Instant Quote. So I'm actually going to pick a different design here. I'll go back and maybe choose this one because I want to show you one of the aspects, which is layers. So I'm going to hit Waterjet Instant Quote. So it knows that there's multiple layers on this knife, one for the blade and one for all the fittings. So now I can actually pick the layer that I want to get a quote for. Because you can actually quote this and have your scales water jetted out of micarta or some other material, which is very cool. But I'm going to do just the blade here. So first I'm going to pick the material, which let's pick AEBL. There's only one size available here. It's telling me the size of the blade and the width, how much it's going to weigh, and the unit price here. And as I go up, it's going to give me some different prices here. I'm not sure if this is a deal that's offered all the time, but right now, as soon as your total goes over $150, shipping is free. So here I'm going to add to cart. It'll just take a second here. I can see something in my cart now. I'll open that up. It tells me there's a material discount, and my project, or my one project, is going to be $173.52. If I hit checkout, you'll see shipping cost is 0. Tells me I'm ordering 8 of them, and I can put in my shipping address and all of this. Hit this, confirm order, and then you'll go through payments and things like that. So that's a really good deal. Basically $22 a piece. I've actually exported to DXF and sent it to another Waterjet company just to check, and they were about 25% more expensive, at least the one I tried. So the Knifeprint folks are very competitive on the Waterjet services. Just a little bit more about the guidelines for Waterjet cutting. I'll go over to Knifeprint's Waterjet cutting guidelines. File formats, obviously we're doing it right from Knifeprint itself, but you can also use a DXF file or an SVG. Scaling, so make sure that your knife is the exact size you want it. It's not scaled to some crazy scale. Best to print it out and ensure that it's the right size before you send it off to them. Make sure that the DXF file only has one copy of the knife in it, because you're going to get charged for everything that's in it. And then just some things to note. Don't have intersecting paths here, like this hole intersects the edge of the knife. Make sure that your contours, your paths are closed. So this one is open right here, so that's going to be a problem. Make sure the Beziers are exactly what you want. It's not going to include things like your handle marks or things like that. Artifact nodes. So sometimes you have these, if you delete a path, sometimes if you delete it node by node, instead of deleting the whole path with like the eraser tool, sometimes there's an artifact path left over. So make sure that you get rid of these before you go to Waterjet anything. And sometimes you will have overlapping nodes, so don't have two nodes that are completely overlapping. So do check your design, and this is why when you're doing it, I recommend use as few nodes as possible so you don't get into problems like this. So that gives you how to do Waterjet cutting of your blades, which is super great. So it saves you so much time in order to do this, and to be able to do it at a click of a button from your design page, you can't beat that, folks. Thanks for joining me on today's episode 5 of the Knifeprint Masterclass Series. The next 3 episodes to round out this series will be full builds. We'll be going deep and doing a couple really complicated builds, so stay tuned. We'll see you on the next one.